In to My Dogs Are Barking on MPW Digital. And, for all those listening, I know this has been a crazy week. I know on Tuesday after the election, a lot of people said that there was a kind of a red wave coming through, but I like to think of it more as a big red machine. And speaking of big red machines, we are very honored to have Mayor of Knox County, Glen Jacobs, WWE Hall of Famer, also known as Kane. Mayor Jacobs, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Landon. I appreciate having me on.
Yeah, and a lot of people who are listening today are going to be traveling to Knox County, traveling to Knoxville for the Mississippi State and Tennessee game. And so, as I was looking over this game this weekend, I thought, is there anyone I know in Knoxville that's, or Knox County that's a good ambassador of Knoxville? So, man, no one better, I feel like, to do that job than you. Man, what can people expect from the city of Knoxville who are traveling maybe for the first time?
Well, Knoxville's a great place to live. It's also a great place to visit. We're actually a foodie town. We may not be known for that, but we have some great restaurants. I would encourage everybody to stop by Calhoun's on the River, which is right near the stadium. It's the closest restaurant to the stadium. Dead End Barbecue is also another great place. In fact, that's where the SEC teams generally get their after game meals from. As well as we have a lot of great burger places, steakhouses, anything you want. And while you're there, I mean, just make a weekend of it. Zoo Knoxville is a wonderful attraction, and if you can, Great Smoky Mountains National Park is right down the road. So there's a lot of cool stuff to do in Knox County and the surrounding area.
Well, Mayor, we'll get to the game in just a second. But first, I feel like you must live such an interesting life. And thinking about how what's the balance like of, obviously you leading a community, you being the mayor, and the contrast of the questions you're asked on a daily basis as the mayor, or the problem solving questions you get, and then all of a sudden, maybe in the exact same day, some person running into you and going, "Oh wow, here's WWE superstar Kane." What's that like going from one thing to the other?
Yeah, it really is interesting because I do kind of have my feet in two different worlds, but it's also really cool. I've been incredibly blessed, obviously, throughout my life, and it's interesting because I'm an introvert at heart, and I keep on picking these careers where I'm out in the public eye and everything. But one of the neatest things that's happened to me since I've retired from WWE is just getting to talk to people about people come up to me all the time. Hey, I watched you with so and so, or my grandmother, and I was at Thompson Boyne Arena once with my wife. We were at a concert, and this lady came up to me and she showed me a picture on her phone. It was me and her son, and he had been at Children's Hospital. I'd gone and visited. And that was the last picture she had of her son while he was alive. So man, it's like to see that impact that you've been so blessed to have on people's lives, it's really pretty amazing. So it's kind of cool though, because people come up to me and I'm like, okay, they want to talk mayor stuff and they don't want to talk wrestling stuff, or is it a combination of both?
That's true. Yeah, I cannot imagine. I just thought kind of almost a funny sequence of you out in the park or something, hanging out with your family. Someone's asking, Mayor, what are we going to do about this? And then some other guy, a geeky guy like myself, comes up, man, what was it like in 2002 at Survivor Series? Asking those questions would have to be
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
crazy.
one time I was having a meeting with a pretty high-ranking state official that I just met as mayor, and we're talking small talk, and all of a sudden he's like, "Look, man, I just got to tell you, I'm a huge wrestling fan, so I just want to get that out of the way." So, but that's one of the things that's really actually to my advantage is because WWE and wrestling now cuts through like pretty much every demographic, right? That just often allows me to have kind of a different touch point with people than your average elected official would. So it's pretty cool, and I can use that to my advantage on a lot of things.
Well, Mayor, this weekend Mississippi State is traveling up to Knoxville, and at the moment Mississippi State is reeling. Top five schedule, most difficult schedule.
Yeah,
On top of that, a lot of things to replace with a first-time head coach. But they're coming into Knoxville, and Tennessee is on the opposite side of the spectrum. They are vying for a spot in the playoff. They're 7-1, and now they have this kind of final stretch of the remaining games with this one, Georgia, UTEP, and then an all of a sudden important game versus Vanderbilt in
you're right.
Nashville.
Right.
What do you make about this last stretch of this season? Where's kind of the feel for the people in terms of Tennessee making the playoffs this year?
Yeah, this has been an interesting season for Tennessee football. They started out so strong and just looked unbelievable. And then kind of in the second half of the Oklahoma game, just I don't know, it almost felt like the momentum got blunted to some extent, especially on the offensive side. And they've been struggling offensively, but they're still winning. And they have one of the best defenses in the country. Their defense is elite. And, I think that just shows you the caliber of coach that Josh Heupel is, though. You think of him as being this high-powered offense, but really what's happened at Tennessee is he has built the program around a tremendous defense and around the running game as well. And of course, Nico is he's struggling a little bit. We all forget that he's a freshman, though, and he's still literally getting used to SEC play. And I think that, there's a stress. The offensive line just didn't play very well. And I think that, Nico's getting hit literally every time he's dropping back. And that gets in your head as a quarterback. But I have a lot of confidence that he's going to overcome that. He's also, there's been some throws that the receivers haven't really done him any favors on because they've had it on their fingertips and weren't being able to bring it in, some catchable balls that I think would build his confidence and build the offensive confidence as well. So there's no doubt that Tennessee, it's a great program. It's interesting this entire season, though, with the expanded playoffs as well as NIL and the transfer portal. As you said, Vandy is no longer chalk it up in the win column. They're doing super this year. So I think that all these things have led to a lot more parity across college football and especially in the SEC. Every game now, there's nothing you can just say, we're going to walk through this game. Every game you have to be prepared to play your best because anyone in the SEC can beat anyone.
That's right. Well, I know Mississippi State fans, at least for this week, are hoping that is true. They're hoping they just stay within the 24 points that the Vegas thinks they might. I did want to ask you about this. I think it'd be remiss if I did not. The election was this past week, or yeah, we're still on Friday. This is actually this week. It's been a crazy long week, I'm sure, especially for you. Now that Donald Trump has been elected president and kind of moving forward, I know there's a lot of people that are celebratory of that, and I kind of wonder, now that the victory kind of has been won, for you guys, what's the next step? Like now that the victory, we know that's going to happen. What are you kind of looking forward to? Is like, all right, well, here's how we're going to begin to get to work for this term.
Sure, it really is a complete change of a perspective because you often think about a lot of the things the federal government does, and here in Tennessee, that's not our philosophy. That's not what we want to do, and we kind of have to push back against that. But now with Donald Trump being back in the White House, that all changes. And for me, it's funny because I woke up Wednesday morning, I was like, what is this strange thing that I'm feeling? The strange emotion. And I realized almost for the first time since COVID, that I was optimistic about the country's future. I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative. I was a big Trump supporter. So for people like me, it's like now we can actually get to work, doing some things, rebuilding our economy. And that I'm a product of the American dream, man. This country's been so good to me. And the reason I got into politics is I want that to go on. I believe that the thing that our country offers that is truly unique and truly exceptional is the American dream. It's the opportunity to improve your life through your own efforts and your own work. And it's good. I think that's making a big comeback now. I'm really happy.
Yeah. Going or shifting from that, thinking about when you meet people on the street, their perception of you has to be so wild because you're so unlike your character. And I'll tell you, just as a kid growing up, I remember being 2001, 2002, being terrified, and you being escorted by the police and you're handcuffed down to the ring, and freaking out, But then people bump into you for real and get to meet who you are as a person. Do you ever see like that look on their face of like what their perception was before or after, or have people ever come up to you afterwards and been like, I did not expect you, to be this nice?
Generally, what people tell me is, man, you scared, just what you said, you scared the heck out of me when I was a kid, though you strong language in that. But I think now that there's been a lot of work done in wrestling world, to expand our audience as well as because of you have people like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and John Cena, who have been very successful outside of the wrestling world. So I think nowadays that people realize that it's acting. for the most part. And I think a lot of it, especially that stigma that was very negative, I think to some extent has been diminished. And I think that people realize, Kane was a character, but that's not who I am. Just like, my favorite movie of all time is Silence of the Lambs. Love the character Hannibal Lecter. Anthony Hopkins is not Hannibal Lecter. I mean, despite the fact that he did such a compelling and just a great performance there. So I think that people understand that, and you still have the folks that, um, can't separate the wrestling part of it from the real world part of it. But nevertheless, most people, I think, do understand that, these are, you're playing a character, and the person behind that character is completely, I mean, look at The Undertaker and everything that Mark has done as far as the 6 Feet Under podcast and now going out. And, I never thought that would happen, that he would literally put Mark Calloway out there. But what's really cool about that is, the Undertaker, greatest character in the history of professional wrestling, but there's a lot to the guy that behind that, the guy that created that. And I think it's really cool now that he gets to tell those stories. So yeah, actually there's not much of people saying, hey, I thought you were going to set me on fire or something like that. Right. So it's generally pretty good.
That's wonderful. Just a few more questions here, Mayor. I've been to several SEC stadiums around. I grew up in Mississippi. I've lived in Tuscaloosa for the past 12 years. Never been to Neyland Stadium, but
Oh, you're missing out then.
Say again.
I said you're missing out then. That's
Well,
all.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. When you think about all the different stadiums in the SEC, Neyland seems to be a very special place. And so I would assume that that's your favorite. But is there another one in the SEC that you would say is comparable to Neyland in terms of the experience?
I think overall, college football is just so unique, and there's nothing else like it. I mean, you think about Neyland Stadium, all the traditions. You have the Pride of the Southland Band, one of the best bands in the country. They put on a tremendous show. The choreography and just everything is amazing. Running through the T and just all the stuff. So overall, I'm partial to Neyland Stadium, but I think overall, college football, especially in the SEC, anywhere you go, is just going to be a unique, great experience. So I don't have another favorite. Neyland will always be my favorite, but I also don't think that any place else is necessarily going to let me down either.
That's right. Hey, especially Starkville, Mississippi. As long as you bring some earplugs for the cowbells, I do understand having to
There
block
you
some of
go.
those things out. Final question. This is just something for me to nerd out on. So if there's no wrestling fans that want to leave, that is okay. But I just have to ask you. John Cena announced that 2025 is his final year in to be competitive in wrestling. A lot of folks, especially my age, I'm rolling up on 30, kind of grew up seeing him and him kind of being the person that kind of took wrestling to the next generation. And I just was wondering, man, do you have a favorite memory when it comes to John Cena, maybe a favorite match or something that sticks out about him? And then lastly, what is his legacy?
So I had quite a few matches against John, and I don't know if I necessarily have anything that really sticks out. I mean, he obviously performed at a very high level for decades. I think the guy's underrated, frankly. When I talk about my Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, I think about the people that were the faces of the industry in their era. So for me, it's Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Cena. And we forget that, yeah, Cena carried WWE for many years. I mean, he was the face of the entire company. We all think, again, I'll think about Rock or Austin, Hogan, and those guys. John's right up there as far as his importance to the wrestling industry. So again, I just actually think that the guy's somewhat underrated for all that he accomplished, and also he was one of those people too. I mean, he just worked really hard. When you see the stuff out in front of the camera, that's one thing. But I mean, he was always out doing something, always out promoting, or into different things. And that's another thing that I talked about earlier about how the company in wrestling has kind of made these inroads into the mainstream, and it's frankly part of that is due to everything that John did over the years. So I think he's a tremendous performer, and that'll be a big loss.
Wonderful, man.